A lion cub lost his mother. Then a wild hyena did the unthinkable. In the vast African savanna, where every shadow hides danger and survival is a daily battle, a tiny lion cub found himself utterly alone after losing the only protector he had, his mother. Weak, trembling, and unaware of the predators lurking nearby, his cries carried across the dry wind. But what happened next would shock everyone who witnessed it. A wild hyena appeared, and what it chose to do left the entire savanna stunned. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring you more powerful stories of survival, courage, and the miracles hidden in the wild. This is not just the story of a cub, it's about loss, betrayal, and a twist that reveals how unpredictable nature can be. Stay with us until the end, because the ending will leave you breathless. The sun was setting over the Serengeti, painting the horizon in shades of orange and crimson. Long shadows stretched across the dry grass, and the golden light seemed to whisper a farewell to the day. Beneath a lone acacia tree, a lion cub lay curled in the dust, his body small and fragile against the immensity of the savanna. His name was Kovu, though no one called him that anymore. His mother, the only one who ever spoke it, was gone. Kovu's mother had been everything: warmth, milk, protection, the gentle nudge that guided him forward when he stumbled. She had defended him fiercely against jackals and vultures, teaching him that the world, though cruel, could still be survived. But now, her body lay still a mile away, taken down by a coalition of rival lions who saw her as a threat. Kovu had escaped in the chaos, his tiny legs carrying him farther than he thought possible. Yet with every step he took, he had left behind not only her body but the last shred of safety he would ever know. The cub's cries were weak, almost swallowed by the wind. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His belly, once full and round from nursing, was now hollow, his ribs beginning to show. Every sound startled him: the rustle of grass, the cry of a bird, the distant roar of another lion. But it was silence he feared the most, because silence reminded him that he was alone. As the night crept in, the savanna changed. The colors faded, the air grew colder, and predators began to stir. Kovu shivered as he lifted his head, eyes darting nervously at the glow of amber eyes moving in the dark. Hyenas. They had been trailing him since sunset, drawn by his pitiful cries. Hyenas rarely wasted effort. They preferred easy meals, scraps, or the weak and vulnerable. And Kovu, trembling and motherless, was the perfect prey. One hyena stepped closer, its paws silent on the dry earth. Its ears twitched, catching every sound, while its muzzle curled into something between a grin and a snarl. Kovu froze, pressing himself lower against the dirt, his tiny claws scratching helplessly at the ground. His instincts told him to run, but his body was too weak. He could barely stand, let alone outrun a predator. The hyena circled him, its laughter-like growl echoing through the silence. It didn't attack immediately. Hyenas were cruel in that way, playing with their prey as if savoring the fear before the kill. The sound made Kovu's heart race, his breaths shallow and quick. He looked toward the horizon, as if hoping his mother might somehow return. But there was only emptiness, and the approaching shadow of death. And then, something unexpected happened. From behind the hyena, another figure emerged. Larger, darker, and moving with deliberate steps. Another hyena, but this one carried a presence that seemed heavier, more dangerous. The first one stepped back, as though bowing to its superior. This was the matriarch of the pack, a scarred female with eyes that gleamed like cold steel. She locked her gaze on Kovu, and for a long moment, the world seemed to pause. Kovu whimpered, his tiny body quivering under her stare. The matriarch tilted her head, studying him with unsettling calm. Her pack waited silently, hungry, ready. The cub's fate was hanging by the thinnest of threads. But instead of lunging, the matriarch sat down. She sniffed the air, then let out a sound that was neither laugh nor growl but something almost thoughtful. Her pack shuffled uncertainly, confused by her hesitation. Kovu blinked, trying to understand. Why wasn't she killing him? The truth was simple and brutal. Hyenas had no reason to feel mercy. To them, Survival was about opportunity, dominance, and hunger. And yet, something in the cub's helplessness, his wide amber eyes staring up at her, struck the matriarch. She remembered her own offspring, lost seasons ago to lions stronger than herself. For the briefest of moments, instinct clashed with memory. The silence stretched on until suddenly, a vulture swooped low overhead, its shadow passing across the cub. The movement snapped the matriarch back to her nature. Her lips curled, and she let out a sharp call that sent the pack forward. Kovu yelped, scrambling to his feet. His tiny legs wobbled, his claws scraped against stones, but he ran. He didn't know where, only that he had to. The pack surged after him, their laughter breaking the night air, mocking his desperate attempt to live. He darted through tall grass, his small frame slipping where larger bodies couldn't. But exhaustion was already clawing at him. His paws burned, his lungs screamed for air, and his legs felt like they might collapse. Behind him, the hyenas closed in, their teeth flashing in the dim moonlight. Kovu stumbled and fell, his face hitting the dirt. The pack slowed, circling him like vultures over a carcass. The matriarch stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. She lowered her head until her breath was hot on his fur. The cub whimpered, shutting his eyes tight, waiting for the end. And then a sound pierced the night. Not the laughter of hyenas, nor the roar of a lion. It was deeper, sharper, a voice that made even the predators flinch. The ground trembled faintly under heavy steps. The hyenas froze, their ears perking up, their eyes darting into the darkness. Something else was coming. Something that would change everything. Kovu opened his eyes, his small body still trembling, unaware that his fate had just shifted in the most unexpected way. The question was, toward salvation, or something far worse? The night air was still, yet heavy with danger. Kovu's body trembled in the dirt, his tiny heart racing so fast it seemed it might burst. Around him, the hyenas had formed a half-circle, their eyes gleaming, their laughter fading into hungry anticipation. The matriarch, towering and scarred, lowered her head closer, her fangs catching the moonlight. And then the sound came again. A guttural growl, not from a hyena, not from a lion, but something that carried weight, authority, and fury. The ground seemed to pulse with the vibration. The pack stiffened, their laughter silenced. The matriarch raised her head sharply, her ears twitching toward the darkness beyond the tall grass. From the shadows emerged a massive silhouette. At first, only the heavy footsteps could be heard, each one pressing into the earth with deliberate force. Then came the outline of broad shoulders, a mane, not golden like a lion's, but dark, ragged, and wild. It was a male lion. His body bore scars of countless battles, and his muscles rippled under his ragged coat. His eyes burned with an intensity that made the hyenas falter. He was not young, but neither was he weak. Every movement announced strength, survival, and a readiness to kill. The hyenas snarled, trying to mask their unease, but even Kovu, small and fragile, could feel the shift in the air. Power had entered the arena. The male lion let out a roar that split the night wide open. It echoed through the savanna, sending birds into the air and even silencing distant jackals. The hyenas shuffled back, whining, their bravado crumbling. But the matriarch did not retreat. She stood her ground, lips curled back, her eyes locked on the lion. For years, she had fought lions for scraps, territory, survival. She knew the strength of a lion's jaws, but she also knew the cunning of her kind. Her pack waited, ready for her command. Kovu lay frozen between them all, caught in the center of a silent standoff. The lion's eyes drifted downward, landing on the cub. For a brief moment, his hardened expression shifted, softened. Something flickered in those golden eyes. Recognition. Maybe even memory. The hyena matriarch noticed it too. And she understood instantly, the cub mattered. She snarled, calling to her pack, and they moved forward as one. Their strategy was simple: distract the lion, take the cub. Chaos erupted. The male lion lunged, claws ripping into the earth as he met the first hyena head-on. His jaws closed around its shoulder, tossing the predator aside with a sickening crack. Another lunged at his flank, But he spun with terrifying speed, swiping his massive paw and sending it sprawling into the grass. The air was filled with snarls, growls, and yelps of pain. The lion fought like a storm, a whirlwind of teeth and claws, holding nothing back. Yet the hyenas were many, circling, snapping, darting in and out. One lunged past him, jaws snapping for Kovu. The cub shrieked, rolling onto his back, tiny paws flailing. The hyena's teeth grazed his fur before the lion's roar cut through again. With one bound, he landed between the cub and the hyena, his jaws clamping down on its throat until silence fell from its twitching body. But the pack kept coming. The matriarch herself charged, sinking her teeth into the lion's hind leg. He roared in pain, swinging around to shake her off, but she clung tight. Blood darkened his golden fur. Another hyena snapped at his tail. Another tried to force its way past him to reach the cub. Kovu's cries were sharp, desperate. He didn't understand why this stranger fought for him, why the lion risked everything. He only knew that for the first time since his mother's death, someone stood between him and the darkness. The lion's strength was waning, his roars growing hoarse, but his fury did not fade. With a final surge, he reared up, crashing down with his full weight on the matriarch. She yelped, her grip broken. He struck again, claws raking across her muzzle, leaving deep lines of blood. She staggered back, dazed, snarling in defiance but weakened. The pack hesitated. Hyenas were loyal to strength, and their leader now faltered. The lion roared once more, a sound that shook the earth beneath them. His eyes blazed, daring them to continue. One by one, the hyenas backed away, whining, their laughter gone. The matriarch growled low but finally turned, limping, and the pack melted into the tall grass, their shadows swallowed by the night. Silence returned. Only the heavy panting of the lion and the trembling whimpers of the cub remained. The lion turned slowly, his massive body battered, bleeding, but unbroken. His gaze fell again on Kovu, who lay shaking in the dirt, too weak to move. For a long moment, neither stirred. Then, the lion lowered himself to the ground, bringing his eyes level with the cub's. His breath was heavy, his chest heaving with exhaustion, but his gaze was steady. He nudged the cub gently with his nose. Kovu flinched at first, then blinked. There was no malice, no hunger in the lion's touch. Only something unfamiliar but strangely comforting, protection. The cub whimpered, then, almost instinctively, pressed his tiny body against the lion's paw. The older lion froze at the contact, his muscles tensing as if the gesture had pierced something deeper than any claw or tooth ever had. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to the fragile bond forming under their light. The lion curled slightly around the cub, his great body shielding the small one from the chill wind. For the first time in days, Kova's eyes closed not in terror but in exhausted relief. His tiny breaths slowed, his body finally surrendering to sleep. The lion did not sleep. His eyes scanned the darkness, ears twitching at every sound. But inside him, something had shifted. He had not meant to intervene. He had not meant to care. Yet here was this fragile life, clinging to him, reminding him of a past he thought long buried. He exhaled slowly, lowering his head to rest near the cub. The night carried on, the savannah alive with whispers of danger. But under the protection of the scarred lion, the cub slept, unaware that his story had only just begun, and that the bond forged tonight would be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. The first light of dawn painted the savannah in soft shades of gold and pink. Dew glistened on the tall grass, and distant birds called out, welcoming the new day. For Kovu, waking beneath the massive shadow of the lion was both strange and comforting. The cub blinked, his tiny body stiff from exhaustion, but when he saw the scarred lion still there, still watching over him, something eased inside his chest. The lion stretched slowly, his muscles rippling, wincing from the wounds left by the hyenas. Fresh blood streaked down his hind leg where the matriarch had bitten him, and his side bore long scratches that would scar over time. Yet he stood tall, his mane wild against the breeze, as if no predator in the world could break him. Kovu whimpered softly, trying to rise. His paws slipped under him, but he pressed against the lion's paw for balance. The older lion glanced down, his eyes narrowing. For a moment, Kovu feared he might be rejected, left behind to fend for himself once more. But instead, the lion bent his head and nudged the cub forward. Not gently, there was a firmness in the gesture, almost demanding. It was as if he said, "If you are to survive, you must walk." Kovu stumbled a few steps, then looked back. The lion followed behind, his body towering, his gaze always scanning the horizon. There was no warmth in his eyes, no fatherly softness, but there was presence. Protection. The sun rose higher, and their journey began. They walked across dry stretches of earth where bones bleached under the sun, through patches of tall grass where the rustle of hidden snakes made Kovu shiver. The cub trailed closely, his tiny body nearly swallowed by the grass, but he kept pace as best he could. Whenever he lagged, the lion's growl would rumble low, pushing him forward. Hunger gnawed at Kovu's belly, sharp and relentless. He had not eaten since before his mother's death. His small body weakened, his steps faltered. At one point, he collapsed into the dirt, panting, his ribs showing beneath his thin fur. The lion stopped. He looked down at the cub, his face unreadable. Then, without warning, he bounded forward into the grass. Kovu lifted his head, ears perked. He heard the thunder of paws, the crash of a body, and a strangled cry. When the lion returned, his jaws carried a young gazelle, limp and lifeless. He dropped it beside the cub, his chest rising and falling with exertion. The scent of fresh blood filled the air, making Kovu's stomach twist with longing. Yet he hesitated. His mother had always fed him, always torn the flesh for him. Now, the gazelle lay before him, whole and unfamiliar. The lion crouched, tearing the carcass with a single snap of his jaws. He pushed a piece of meat toward Kovu with his paw. The cub sniffed, then took a tentative bite. Warmth spread through his body as he ate, the sharp ache of hunger slowly fading. The lion ate as well, but sparingly, watching the cub devour his share. Every so often, his gaze would linger, not with affection, but with something deeper, something Kovu could not name. When the meal was done, the cub curled into the earth, his belly full. He expected the lion to move on, to leave him there, but instead the massive beast lay beside him, his great body casting a shield against the midday sun. For the first time, Kovu allowed himself to rest without fear. Yet the peace was short-lived. By evening, the wind carried new scents, sharp, acrid, and familiar. Hyenas. The pack had not forgotten. The lion stiffened, rising to his feet. His ears flicked, his nostrils flaring. Kovu's heart sank. He pressed closer to the lion, his tiny body trembling. Memories of snarling teeth and mocking laughter flooded his mind. The lion turned, his eyes meeting the cub's. In them, Kovu saw not fear but resolve. The same resolve that had driven him into battle the night before. But as the shadows deepened, the cub realized something troubling. The lion was wounded, slower than before. His strength had been drained by the fight and the long day's journey. If the hyenas returned in force, could he protect them both? The first laugh echoed across the plain. High-pitched, mocking, chilling. Then another, closer. Soon, the air was filled with their chorus, surrounding them like a storm. The lion snarled, his mane bristling, his body tense. He stepped forward, placing himself between the cub and the sound. Kovu huddled close behind, his tiny heart pounding. Out of the grass slunk the matriarch, her muzzle still scarred from the lion's claws, her eyes blazing with hatred. Behind her, at least a dozen hyenas emerged, their eyes glowing, their teeth bared. Kovu whimpered. He had thought the terror was behind them. He had thought the lion's strength was unshakable. But now, as he looked at the lion's bleeding flank and ragged breaths, doubt crept in. Could even he withstand this? The hyenas fanned out, circling, their laughter rising in the darkening air. The matriarch advanced slowly, her gaze fixed on the cub this time, not on the lion. She had learned her lesson. The cub was the weakness. The prize. The lion roared, stepping forward, his claws tearing into the earth. The sound shook the savannah, but the hyenas did not retreat. They had tasted his blood once. They wanted more. Kovu crouched low, his body trembling. He wanted to be brave. He wanted to believe in the lion. But as the circle closed and the night filled with the sound of predators, one thought consumed him. What if this time, the lion cannot save me? And as the hyenas lunged, the cub realized the bond between them was about to face its greatest test yet. The moonlit savanna was still trembling from the echoes of the hyena's laughter. Kovu pressed his small body against the ground, his eyes wide with terror as the scarred lion stood tall above him. Blood dripped from the lion's wounds, his breaths came in ragged bursts, but his stance remained unbroken. His massive frame was a wall between the cub and the world that wanted to devour him. The hyena matriarch advanced, her scarred muzzle glinting in the pale light. Hatred burned in her eyes. She had been humiliated once, and now she wanted not only the cub but the pride of destroying the lion who had defied her. Her pack circled closer, snapping their jaws, shadows shifting in the tall grass. Kovu whimpered, his small body trembling. He wanted to cry out for his mother, but she was gone. The only figure he had now was this battered lion who had chosen, against all reason, to stand and fight for him. The lion roared, a sound that split the sky itself. It carried through the plains, silencing even the insects. The hyenas faltered, some stepping back, but the matriarch snarled and barked, forcing them forward. The battle erupted in chaos. The lion surged forward with fury, slamming into the first hyena with his full weight, his claws raking deep. He spun, snapping his jaws around another's neck, tossing it lifeless to the ground. But for every hyena he struck down, two more lunged at his sides. They clawed but dragged him down. His mane was streaked with blood, his leg gave under him, but still he fought like a storm, refusing to yield. Kovu cried out, watching as the lions staggered under the swarm. The matriarch lunged for the cub, her jaws wide, but before she could reach him, the lion intercepted, roaring so fiercely it shook Kovu's bones. With a final surge, he struck the matriarch across the muzzle, tearing her scarred face anew. She yelped in pain, stumbling back. The pack hesitated. Their leader faltered, her face dripping blood, her growl weaker than before. They glanced between her and the lion, torn between loyalty and fear. The lion swayed on his paws, his chest heaving, blood matting his golden fur. He was exhausted, broken, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. With a roar born not of strength but of defiance, he stood over Kovu, daring them to try again. The savanna went still. One by one, the hyenas backed away. Their laughter died. The matriarch glared, hatred burning, but even she knew the truth. To continue was death. With a final snarl, she turned, limping into the tall grass. The pack melted into the shadows, leaving silence behind. The lion dropped to his knees, his body trembling. His sides rose and fell like crashing waves, each breath a battle. Kovu rushed to him, pressing his tiny body against the lion's paw. "Don't leave me," he whimpered, his voice thin and desperate. The lion's eyes, once hard as stone, softened. He bent his head, nuzzling the cub gently. In that moment, the scarred beast who had lived his life in battles and solitude allowed himself to feel something he had long buried, love. Not for pride, not for victory, but for the fragile life that had chosen him. Kovu's tears wet his fur as he buried his face against the lion's chest. For the first time since his mother's death, he felt safe. Not because the danger was gone, it never would be, but because he was no longer alone. The lion shifted, curling his great body around the cub. The wounds still bled, his strength nearly gone, but his spirit blazed brighter than the stars above. He lowered his head beside Kovu's, closing his eyes as the cub nestled against him. The night carried on, the savanna breathing in silence. Somewhere in the distance, the hyenas howled, but their voices were faint now, powerless. Under the shield of the scarred lion, the cub drifted into sleep, his tiny body rising and falling with peace he thought he'd never know again. And the lion, though weary and broken, stayed awake a little longer. His eyes scanned the horizon, ears twitching at every sound. But inside, something had changed forever. The battle had not just been for survival, it had been for meaning. In saving the cub, he had saved himself from the emptiness of his scars. By dawn, the savanna would see two figures still standing, a lion weathered by time and battle, and a cub who had lost everything but found a protector in the unlikeliest of places. It was not the end of danger, but it was the beginning of a bond that nothing, not even death, could break. And as the first light of morning spread across the plains, painting them gold, the lion exhaled deeply, resting his head at last. Kovu curled closer, whispering in his own small way, "I am yours. You are mine." Together, they had faced the impossible. Together, they had won.